Recording. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our Gradstock 2020 day 2. So again, I'd like to say welcome for giving up your time and joining us virtually this year, and welcome to the law panel, which you have been bombarded with emails from me about. So I don't necessarily apologize for that because you are all here. So before we start, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to our panelists. They are then happy to talk more about their role and what they've done during their presentation. So first up, we have Jamie Roberts, who is our representative from F-Lex, and he will be discussing the platform with you some more. And he is also a future trainee, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any questions on that towards the Q&A at the end of the session. Next up, we have Claire Jutsum, who is our graduate recruitment specialist. She's going to be going through a presentation with you about applying for training contracts and the on-interview parts and the assessment session. So she touches up on a bit of everything. She is the best person to talk to you about this, as this is where her career has started from. And lastly, we're going to hear from Shama Gupta, who is our Diversity and Inclusion Ambassador. She's also a member of the Law Society's Social Mobility. And again, she is a committee member of the Law Society's Lawyers with Disabilities. So she's going to be contributing to the talk throughout. And she's also just going to tell us a bit more about why social diversity and mobility is so important in law and how it's going to benefit all of you in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over on to Jamie. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and he's going to take it from here.
Thank you. Cool. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, I think if you click escape, it goes to a full screen.
It's showing the.
If you go to escape on your keypad, I think it goes to full screen. It says.
Yeah. Oh, Jamie, can't hear you.
Yeah, you've got it up there. That's fine. If you just click return, it'll go to the next one. Next slide.
I think something's gone wrong with my screen there.
Okay. We can hear you now.
Okay, is that working?
Yeah. Perfect, brilliant.
Thanks, guys. So my name is Jamie. I am a Flex associate, and I've also been a Flex paralegal. And I'm also a future trainee at Osborne Clark. So I've been through the whole experience of being in law school, graduating, not really knowing what to do with myself, and then applying to Flex to be a paralegal. So I'm just going to go through Flex and what we do. So Flex creates opportunities for law firms, lawyers and students. And how they do that is lawyers need paralegals to undertake work when they have peaks of work, and law students need legal work experience so that they can secure a training contract. And so we basically act as the middleman to try and get law students and graduates, paralegals, into law firms and in-house legal teams. And so the story behind Flex is that basically it was founded by two people, Mary and James. Mary is an ex-property litigator at Wingham Sherwood, and James is a tech developer. And Mary would, where she worked, she'd often look out her window and she'd look at a law school, and she'd always see law students and graduates who didn't have legal work experience. And she remembered when she was in that position, she needed some legal work experience and couldn't get any. So she thought there must be an easy way to get law students and grads into these positions. So she essentially teamed up with James about 4 years ago to create this online tech platform where we have about 4,000 paralegals on our books, and whenever a client comes to us, we can get them a paralegal instantly. So some of the clients we work with, it's a huge range, to be honest. Magic Circle firms, Silver Circle firms, American firms, through to more boutique kind of high street firms, and also in-house. It's about a 50-50 split between law firms in-house. And so as you can see on the screen, there's a huge range. So ASOS is one of our biggest clients. Law firms include Stevens and Harwood, Dentons, and there's just a whole range of opportunities to get involved with. We've won a number of awards, LexisNexis Legal Awards, Legal Week Innovation Awards, the Lawyer Awards. We've kind of been recognised for the innovation and tech that we've been doing, and also the opportunity we create for law students. So as I mentioned, we have about 4,000 or so paralegals and about 200 lawyers. Our paralegals speak over 150 languages, and 35% of them study abroad. So we have quite a diverse pool of candidates that are just available to undertake any work possible. And so working for Flex, how it all works is essentially, what is a paralegal? So you might know who this is. This is Rachel Zane, Meghan Markle from Suits. So paralegals are essentially law professionals working in support roles, solicitors and barristers. They aren't qualified, so have to undertake work under legal supervision. But the kind of work paralegals get involved with is a wide range, to be honest. Majority of the roles kind of include some form of document review, HR, so reviewing foreign documents, reviewing documents for e-disclosure, using programs like Relativity, tagging documents for personal data, redacting documents for personal data. You can kind of get involved with a whole range of things, to be honest. For example, I worked on a subject access request once, and also just a document review for a competition case. It really depends on the client, to be honest, and you can probably work for half a day doing a filing in a court, or you can work for about 6 months working on a document review, or working alongside a solicitor and just doing whatever work they need you to do. And why paralegal work is beneficial to you. It's a great way to learn new areas of law. I knew when I was at law school, I didn't really know what areas of law I eventually wanted to qualify into. So it's a good way to get a bit of exposure to different areas of law, and you hear about commercial and litigation, but you might not necessarily know what the work entails unless you actually do a bit of the work. Raise your profile in the legal industry. So it's a great way to make connections. I've certainly benefited from it loads. When I worked at Freshfields, it was just a great way to meet lawyers, learn about their journey into law, get some really valuable advice from them, and just kind of, if you get good feedback from one law firm, they will remember you, and the legal industry is quite small and people do talk. It's just a great way to accept and reject opportunities that work around your availability. So we do have, the majority of our roles are on a full-time basis, but we do sometimes get part-time roles. So it's a great way, if the right opportunity comes in, it works around your availability. And also, if you had 2 weeks over Easter where you didn't need to do any revision or study, you can maybe take those 2 weeks to do some work. You receive a monthly newsletter full of useful content and events. Our blog has kind of recently gone under a huge revamp, and there's so many useful content and advice on there. There was also the possibility of permanent employment opportunities. So some of our clients will take someone on for maybe 6 months, but they've done such a good job and there's a business need that they take them on permanently. And it's also led to training contracts for some of our paralegals. So a bit about my experience. I graduated from the University of Liverpool from my law degree last year. I then didn't know what to do with myself. So I signed up to Flex in Manchester. I got on onboarding within a couple of days and then got put forward for a role at Freshfields. And I was at Freshfields for 6 weeks over the summer. I worked on a couple of projects. So the first one was a document review for a competition case. And then the one was a tax review where I was just going through emails, tagging for personal data and privilege. And then shortly after, I joined Panoni Corporate for 2 weeks where I did a data subject access request. It was a great opportunity just to kind of work in a boutique corporate law firm. It was great to get the differences between a Magic Circle law firm and then a boutique law firm and just compare where I would probably fit in the future. I then worked at GQ Littler. That was only for a day. I was just finalising P-Star, but it was really good because all the associates there, it's a boutique employment law firm, but all the associates there trained at Big Law. So there was associates from Freshfields, Linklaters, and it was just great to understand why they moved from Big Law to a boutique employment law firm. I then joined Flex in January this year. So I work on the commercial development scheme, which is a program for people like me who want to be a lawyer, and our bosses are all former lawyers, so they kind of train us up, teach us the skills we need to for our training contracts. I then did a vacation scheme at Osborne Clark in the summer and was offered a training contract, and I don't think I would be able to do that without Flex and the skills that I've learned from there. And so how it would work for you guys is you apply to work. So you sign up to Flex Legal, where you just submit your CV, and then one of the team will review your CV and get back to you with an outcome. If you're successful, you then get invited to undertake a Zoom interview and a profile completion. That essentially means you're accepted onto our platform, and you'll be, if any suitable work comes in for you, we would send it across to you. So if something did come through, we would send you a text message and an email, and you essentially see whether you're interested. If you're interested, that lets us know, and then we send across profiles to the client, and then the client will decide based on them. And yeah, it's really, really straightforward. It's a really good opportunity for you guys to get some work experience. We are at a bit of a backlog at the moment with interviews, so it may take a while before you would get an interview. And I would also recommend, if you were in your second year, maybe wait till the summer to apply, as we'll probably be out of the backlog by then, and you won't just be sitting around on the platform, and we'll make sure we're able to get some good opportunity for you. So that's pretty much everything from me. These are all our social media pages. I definitely recommend having a look at those. The marketing team's been working really hard to release some really good content for you guys. We've also teamed up with Harry Clark, who's kind of a LinkedIn blogger. He's a trainee at Baker McKenzie. We're releasing some podcasts with him, and I definitely recommend to look at those. But apart from that, any questions at all on Flex or training contract applications, I'd be happy to help.
I think we've got a couple of questions that we can quickly do now before we move on to the presentation, to Claire's presentation and Claire's talk, just because they've come through, but the rest of them we will get to towards the end. So someone's asked, do you need to have completed law school before, or the LPC, before you sign up to Flex?
No, so you don't have to done the LPC. We accept applications from second year of your LLB, or if you've done the GDL, so second year LLB.
Okay, brilliant. So that answers that one. And the next one was how hard is the interview? So do they consist of tricky questions, or are they more competency based?
Yeah, I hate calling them interviews because they're not really interviews. I never see them as interviews. I see them as a chat. But the hardest part, I would say, is getting accepted onto the platform. So we do have some application criteria. It's nothing really extensive, but once you're accepted, then you're kind of on the platform, unless you do really something stupid in your onboarding. So it's just about you. It's very much an informal chat, just about your background, your legal work experience, and what you're interested in. And then we also do a right to work check, which is just you showing us your right to work documents, and we explain how the process works again.
Brilliant. There's just one more and then we'll move on. What qualities are needed to become a successful applicant at Flex?
Good question. I think just be open-minded. Don't come in thinking that you're gonna be getting a finance job straight away. I'd say be open-minded. There's so many opportunities on the Flex platform. Try and be confident, come across well, because that's all we can really base it on. Is if you come across well, then the client will be able to place you, and the client will see that as well. And yeah, I think just be open-minded is the top quality.
Brilliant. Okay, so
Shama,
thank you.
Shama,
Yes.
may I step in with a question at this stage? If
Yes,
that's all
of
right
course
with
you can.
Jamie?
Yeah, of course.
In the light of the current, I suppose, momentum to ensure that there's proportionate representation of lawyers within the profession, and I'm not just thinking of Black Lives Matters, but disabled lawyers and lawyers from disadvantaged backgrounds. Do you find that employers are asking you for particular types of candidates to put forward to them? Do they have a preference? Have they specified any preference or not?
So we actually never get the preferences we always get asked is always, we always say, you know, what kind of experience are you looking for? Do you want a future trainee? Do you want someone who's done the LPC or 6 months of real estate? And I can honestly say most clients come back and say, no specific experience required. This would be desirable. And we have a video on the profile. So it's about a 30-second clip, just saying, hi, my name is Jamie. I'm a law graduate from X. My experience includes Y. And that's just so the client can get a sense of their personality, see a bit about them, see whether they fit in within the team. But clients never really come saying we want a specific type of person, I would say.
I just wonder whether F-Lex could then offer particular types of candidates to employers, just to nudge them a little bit to think about, for example, disabled students.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in my time at Flex, I don't think I've ever onboarded a disabled candidate. But for us, I know we wouldn't have any problems at all. And we collect all diversity data as well. Started doing that recently. So it's been good for us to kind of see the diversity of our applicants as well.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So Jamie is going to stick around a little bit and contribute towards the end. So thank you, Jamie. I am seeing some questions coming through, but my colleague Emma is collating those, so they will all be answered. So I'd like to now move on to Claire, who has kindly put together a spectacular presentation for you all. So please do watch and pay attention, and she will probably answer your questions before you think of them. So keep a keen eye out on what she's going to say.
Great. Am I ready? Set. Okay.
Yes, you're all good to go.
Excellent. Welcome to everyone who's tuned in, and I hope this is a useful session. So basically, this is the title of the webinar: how to approach your training contract application and prepare for interview. Here, I am trying to get to the next one. Okay. Right. So a lot of people literally just don't know where to start. So normally the advice would be don't over apply to too many applications all at one time, because they do take a long time to do. There's kind of a general idea that you would only sort of look at maybe 6 to 8 because they do take quite a lot of hours of research. It does also depend on how much you've already had to do with firms. You might already have networked, you might already have sort of some connections that you've made where you know that you might need to research less on, so you're happy to sort of draw up a list of you know, a certain number. And then research, so basic research, if you need to find out sort of more details about what the trainees think of the firm, it's quite advised to look at the Chamber Student Guide. It really does provide a lot of information, especially from the trainees' point of view. There's a section called The True Picture where quotes are particularly taken from the trainees themselves, and they are actually honest, like down to earth, kind of like basically what they really think of the firm. So it's a really good resource where you actually want to find out what they really think. So when you apply, focus on where you want to apply to, because sometimes you might hear from your colleagues and they might just have their own opinions on things. But it is quite important to have your own ideas about where you want to apply to. And sometimes people think, oh, it's so competitive there, I don't think I'll apply because I just won't have a chance. But, you know, really try and work out what you want and try not to be distracted by other people and what they say, because you're an individual. You might actually, you know, they might want you as opposed to, you know, everyone else. It's important for you to decide. So intakes wise, if you're really unsure, then it's good to get some experience in different sized firms, but the smaller intakes tend to be more popular because obviously you're taken on in a smaller group, and you get to know each other. It's a little bit more collegiate, and maybe it feels like you're just more of a person than a number. So it can be slightly more competition, but it's really better to focus on what you do want, and obviously try to, you know, aim for the kind of firms that you want to work for. So additionally, I've just said, so on qualification, you're more likely to be kept on with a smaller intake, whereas some of the larger firms might take on a huge number, knowing that they probably won't take on everybody at the end, so it's more of a gamble. If you get offered at a smaller firm, they've really looked into you as a person and really brought into you. So there's just a couple of advantages to different size firms when you apply. So what kind of questions will you be asked? So I sort of put together some actual questions that do get asked for either vacation or training contract applications, and they're just worth thinking about in advance about how you might answer these. So some of them are quite easy, some of them might take longer to work on, as you can see. So explain why you're applying to the firm and your career ambitions. So basically the firm are just wanting to know what it is particularly about that firm that you like. It might be a practice area, it might be that you network some trainees and they said they like the training. Obviously there's a lot of similarities between firms with the way they operate, the firms and the practice areas. So it's just differentiating specific elements that you can point out to say, this really appeals to me. So it's trying to put an individual approach onto it. And details of interests. Yep. So sometimes they just want to kind of know what you do outside of the legal world, anything that you do that wouldn't really necessarily always be included on the CV, for example. So they like to know any non-legal work experience that you've done, because it shows like leadership, management. So that's question would be aimed from a firm that obviously trying to find that out. Describe why a career in commercial law appeals to you, which is quite a common popular one because a lot of the city firms are corporate commercial based. And again, you just have to think of really genuine reasons why. Just look at those sort of types of law and deals and see if they relate to anything you've done so far, because you might be applying in your second or third year, in which case you might not have had as much experience. So just sort of try to be commercially aware to sort of understand what you might be interested in if you had to answer that question. How does the firm differ from competitors? That's quite a popular one. So again, it's good to differentiate in your own mind anyway when you're applying, so you might have some good ideas already, and again, that's just a question you'd have to just do more research work on. And then the skills and experience to make a practical difference. Yeah, so sometimes you have a more complicated question. You have to think of a scenario, and obviously the more work experience you have, the easier that will be. And you don't often have to have a legal work experience example, because any work experience in, you know, financial services or business will easily be relatable to a legal work experience. So especially when you're second and third year, they're not expecting to have lots of legal work experience because you won't have had time to obtain that. So you can just be involved in virtual workshops, insight days, and just rely on the fact that you've done work experience, like at your local pub, or you've been a waiter, or you've worked for a family business. All of those things are just as crucial and just as good to put towards your application. And then provide an example of when you took the initiative to develop a new idea and change the status quo. So again, they're just trying to see if you've actually been involved in something like that, and it would be difficult to answer if you didn't have a good example. And again, sometimes people don't feel ready to apply in their sort of second or third year because they might not even have had these examples to provide, in which case, you know, the paralegal opportunities are quite good. Some people prefer to take time out, do some paralegal work, and then feel ready to answer those questions and apply when they're ready. So applying when you're ready is also really important, not to feel the pressure to apply before so. Okay, so we're right. So word count. I mean, typically vacation schemes and training contracts, they vary. A training contract might have about 3 questions, and they can be quite long and take time to research on. But the word count issue, I think sometimes it's better to have more than less information. So I think just write everything down that you want. I have got an article just to give a bit of basic information on my website. You can check that out if that helps. But this is just basically what I suggest. So write out everything. Don't worry about the word count. And then obviously just work through and praise C down. It's something you need to get quite good at, sort of making answers quite concise. And then just think about what's more important in conveying the overall message. There might be quite a lot of detail, so sometimes for the questions you need to take out the detail and just be more succinct, and that's something that I sort of do a lot of, so that's where I can offer my services if required. So again, this is an example of being concise. So I've just put an example up there. So basically I've used an example that has actually been a proper example from somebody that was writing, and I just picked that one out. So it's just a case of taking out a lot of what you're trying to say, but making it just much shorter, and then you'll find that you can be more direct and succinct in your answers. Okay, so work experience. I just need to move some images over there. That's better. Okay, so for work experience, you basically need, so basically include anything that you have already done to date. So when you've got your CV and you've got all your work experience listed, you'll probably have work experience that's also non-legal work experience, and that's fine. You should include everything, because at the early stage when you're at university, you won't have had the opportunity to be able to list lots of work experiences, and as time goes by you can obviously maybe eliminate or just make a lot smaller those ones and bring up the more recent ones, but obviously you have to work with what you've got. So just make sure that whatever experiences you have, you include the skills that you've learned and developed, and you'll find that most of those are quite trainee related. So information on, so provide more information on the latest experiences, and condense the shorter roles, which I just said. And so you're aiming to look at trainee skills, which are often management, leadership, responsibility, and all of those things are obviously going to be in most jobs that you work in. And basically that's just what they're trying to see, that you're in the working world and that you're capable, and any good examples that will help you should be listed. And I put the wow factor because sometimes people have an experience where they're sort of praised, promoted, commended. It might mean that their vacation scheme was their internship was extended, or they were asked back the following year. So if these kind of things have happened, they're for your CV, so you should definitely use those, and they can also be used in your training contract applications if you have to give an example of something you've done where you made a difference, because you might have been promoted because you worked through a task or project where you came up with some really good ideas, because they like to obviously know that you're thinking about strategies for things early on, just showing the potential that you can do that. And another tip is for LinkedIn is to try and use your LinkedIn as much as you can. And if you did get a really good recommendation or promotion from someone you work with, try and get that written, and then you've got it permanently basically on your LinkedIn profile, which is always really useful if potential recruiters are looking to find out more about you. Okay, so writing about the firm and current deals. So when you do write your application, they will often ask you a question related to a deal. They don't want you to list loads of deals, because sometimes people do that. They're trying to be clever and it doesn't work because they know what their deals are. So unless you're actually adding value to your comments, it doesn't mean anything. So, don't be so factual about what you've read. You've got to basically do your research, put all the factual information down, and then you have to think about why you like it, what it is about it that interests you, and try and tie it into something that you did work experience wise, or that you're hoping to do, or your university modules that you're studying. You'll find there is a correlation with something sooner or later. And it isn't actually that necessary to know what areas of law that you are going to be going into, because then in a training contract you have between normally 4 seats over 2 years, sometimes 6, but firms don't actually want you to be too specific, because you have to experience all these other seats. So it's quite good to be flexible, but at the same time obviously you want to get an idea about the kind of areas you want. If you had a vacation scheme, you'd have the opportunity to experience those seats. If you were, obviously it's virtual, it's a bit different now, but you used to be able to sit in there in a sort of practice area for a week and have a really good idea about that practice area, which would help you sort of hone down a certain area that you knew you would want to follow on later on. So research every aspect of the deal. So if you're mentioning a deal in one of your questions on your application, just make sure that if you get through to the interview, that you do research it even more thoroughly and find out the very latest on it, just because they will look at that when partners come to interview. They're going to want to have something to ask you. So they'll look at your application and think, oh, brilliant, they're talking about that deal, let's see what they think about that. So it's just worth noting that that the reason, the deal that you choose is very important to know inside out. Okay, and yeah, so provide an individual perspective of your own on the deal. So again, it's just having a genuine interest in what you write about, and just sort of everything you say is backed up, so that you've got answers really to every question. Okay, so a lot of people in their applications, they don't write positively enough. They're not confident enough, and a lot of people mention this kind of imposter syndrome idea, but a lot of people have that, in certain professions, or everybody's probably experienced it, where you just think, oh, I'm in this position of authority. But basically, you have to sometimes sort of be confident if you're not that confident to get through to this next stage. So although you might rather say, oh, I should, or I think, or I hope, in your application, you have to be really confident, and you have to say things that are a lot more positive. So my ability to, I will, I can offer. And obviously you'll hopefully use those sentences in quite a genuine manner, where you have already, told yourself, I'm really good at this skill and I can show it. So, don't be modest. It's not the time to be modest. And it is the time to really sell yourself and your skills. Okay. Okay, so I think this question, I don't know if it was from your students or other students. So advice for non-law students. So sometimes non-law students do worry about what they need to do. And I think one of the questions was, what's the best way to demonstrate the transferable skills from non-legal work experience to a legal application? So again, it's kind of going back to being genuine and using proper examples that have inspired you towards a legal career, because obviously you will have real examples. So it shouldn't be really too difficult if you're going down a route that you've thought about going down. And then think about the skills as a trainee and how they're related to the non-legal work experience. Like you might have worked in customer service, which you would have been problem solving, you would have had to make decisions, and your communications, verbal and written, would obviously be improving. And all of those are trainee skills that are needed as a trainee, as a lawyer. So you can equate a lot of non-law work experience, to the potential to then put towards a legal, career, and your legal work experience can be built on from that. And then non-law students, so you can name employees who influenced you, because a lot of the time you're probably going to, as a non-law student, speak to a lot more people that haven't done law, because you're going to be seeking out, like, how do I convince people I want to do law? But you'd be surprised, or not, I don't know, but at least 50% of non-law students get offered training contracts. And a lot of the time the partners just want the potential, they want the academic ability to think and solve and have creative thinking. So to be honest, some partners might even prefer you to be a non-law student because it's more interesting. So it's absolutely no way a disadvantage. So you finish your application, and then there's just a couple of checklists which I think are very, very useful. So it's better to get someone to check your application before submission, because it's guaranteed they'll find something. They will change, but even if it's just something where, even if it's something really obvious, but yeah, so do that. And the spell check, you'd be surprised. A lot of the time it's not set to UK spelling, and a lot of people have Z's and things where they shouldn't, but we are in the UK, so it should be UK spelling. And actually some firms are really specific. If you make one error, it's out. So it's better just to be 100% sure you get your application correct. And if you do require a visa, it is better just to confirm that in any cover letters, because the recruiter might not necessarily look at the application initially, and it's just good to have it reiterated, just so that they know that there's no issues with that. Provide dates when you cannot attend interviews. So sometimes firms will literally send you an invitation where you haven't really got any choice, or very limited choice. Whereas if you at least tell them in advance that you can't do a certain week, then at least they know, and that solves a lot of issues. And I personally recommend sending the application at about 3 days before the deadline, because if you just keep saying the deadline's tomorrow, I'll do it before midnight, it's guaranteed, and my experiences have been that applications haven't gone through because the basically the system's crashed. It always does, because so many people do it at the last minute, and then it might mean that you don't get your application looked at because you left it really, really late. The deadline is more of an indicator of when it needs to be sent by, but it doesn't mean send it at 11:45 when it closes at 12, so just bear that in mind. And on occasion in my graduate recruitment experiences, yeah, I've had someone call up and say, oh, I just found an invitation to interview in my junk mail and it was too late. So good bit of advice. So where are we? So how to present yourself during a virtual interview. So now it's also virtual. People don't probably really maybe take as long to think about this, but I think especially if it's a partner-led interview, you really want to get that right. So the suggestion is to dress more, you know, more smart, so you feel like you actually are at an interview, and with your laptop, it's a really good idea to sort of, yeah, sit quietly, don't get disturbed. And if you have your camera at the eye level, or the picture of the person who you're being interviewed by right in the middle at the top, it looks like you're looking at that person, as opposed to, you know, a lot of people when we're doing webinars and things, you see they're looking all over the place, or left, right, up. It just makes everybody a bit more engaged. Now, it could be, it's happened to me as well many times, if you lose connectivity, just be prepared if that happens, because you can have your phone, you know, with a number to call and then just dial in. So just make sure that that's prepared and ready and it's already charged up. And then, yep, so for body language, you do want to sit straight in front of the camera. Don't fidget around, because an interview is going to be a lot more intense. It's not like just a webinar like we're doing here. It's kind of they're going to be looking straight at you and looking at your body language. So the eye contact obviously is important. So it will help if you are looking where you should be looking, straight ahead at the top. And yeah, so that's just a couple of things which might seem really simple, but I think they can make quite a big difference to how the overall effect of your interview comes across. So the interview approach, so some people would already have researched the firm quite well, or they might have met quite a lot of trainees. And then I think when it comes to the interview, then I think you would feel a lot more confident and you wouldn't feel so scared about the interview, because you kind of know what you're getting to. So hopefully that might help the more you find out about the firm and the more you engage with them. And yeah, so at the interview, of course, it's going to be difficult. You're going to be quite nervous. You've got a lot of questions you've got to answer, but try to show if there is genuine enthusiasm, that you are really enthusiastic about the firm and, you know, you're happy to be interviewed for the firm. Don't just look completely scared. And a sense of humor, it really is something they want, because the partners, the lawyers, everyone at the firm, they want to work with people they can have a bit of a laugh with sometimes. So a sense of humor is important. So when you talk to the partner, have a focus about what your key skills are, because it's not only basically what the firm are kind of looking for, it's also what you can offer the firm. So the skills that they need, you also need to convince them that you can offer those. And for some people who have had sort of paralegal experience and applied a bit later, are actually in a better position in some respects. But if you can get offered potential in your second or third year, you will have less skills. But if they can see the potential, they'll offer you. So again, you won't have as much to offer, but the potential would be there. So you just have to build on your academics, on your degree, basically. So you're just using what you've got to get, you know, to get convinced to move forward to the next stage. And basically, if it's for a vacation scheme, it won't be as drilling an interview as it would be for a training contract. So you would have the chance to prove yourself on the scheme. I mean, obviously virtually is not quite the same, it's a lot shorter, but there would be opportunities for you to be able to show what kind of skills you've got, like through the work you're provided with, and you'd be assessed on. So that would be different to a training contract interview. And again, it's been said by partners I've spoken to that if you need to answer a question and it's really quite a complicated one, don't just suddenly think really quickly and then answer. You are actually allowed to have a few moments to think about it and try not to panic. Easier said than done, but I think after you've had a few interviews, you'll get better. You might fail the first 2 or 3, but just think everybody's been in that position, everybody. So it's really better just to you know, get through the first few maybe and think, okay, well, I'll try again next time and I'll be a lot more confident. And mock interviews can be done at universities, so they're really worth doing. And actually, I'll put it as one of my services if anyone wants to have their sort of interview questions critiqued, because a couple of students asked me recently. It seemed to really help anyway. I think if you have your sort of formulated answers, someone could just point out to say, I wouldn't really say that, or I'd angle here, or angle then. Sometimes it can be the right or wrong thing that's said that kind of gets you through. Okay. So yeah, definitely. If you get an interview, obviously your application was good, so you know that is an achievement in itself. So well done. And then approaching your interview, yeah. So again, I've mentioned vacation schemes and training contracts. They are both the same interview. They're looking for exactly the same things, but obviously the drilling down of certain questions might be less intense for the vacation scheme because they're going to have time to get to know you more. So the interview, again, you're trying to show why you like the firm, what you can offer, and your personality. So a lot of what I'm saying is repeating, but it kind of starts to get there in the head, and then you're like, okay. Before you know it, you'll get it all. And then the interview for training contract, again, I'm repeating myself, but the interview for training contract will be more rigorous, and the vacation scheme allows the firm more time to decide. So yes, it has been repeated, but that's not a bad thing. Okay, so I've just put this slide in because at interview, if you are asked to ask a question, I think that could be so difficult. You're like, what do I ask? I just had a few ideas. So for the virtual scheme, if they say, oh, have you got any questions to ask? You could maybe say, will the scheme be more project and learning based? Or will there be a client work opportunity? Because in a vacation scheme in the office, you would obviously have time to meet and deal with clients. So how would they basically, you know, swap that round? How would they make that as an alternative? So I think that would be quite a good question to ask, actually. And again, another one is, how do you convey the culture of the firm through a virtual scheme? So I think those two questions would be good ones to ask. So for the virtual training contract interview, if you have to ask a question, you could maybe ask how the training will be split between home and work and the office. But that's only if they haven't already told you that, but that was just an idea. And again, you might want to ask about more networking, socializing opportunities. How do they do that virtually? And it's just a topic of conversation. If it feels right to ask. If not, then you don't have to. If you've had a real grilling of an interview, you might just like, I've had enough now. They normally say you should ask a question. So just maybe just try to aim something short and sweet. Okay, so there's just a few ideas for you to think about. Okay, how to stand out during your training contract interview. So again, you're confirming your commitment to that particular firm. They're investing a lot of money in your training, and they want to know that you want to work there and be there and stay there. So you really have to get that message across, because, you know, 30 odd plus grand per trainee is quite a lot of money, and they do want you to stay. They normally recruit to retain people, especially more sort of small, medium-sized firms. And then show you're confident in what you can offer. So again, you know, confident in the skills that you do already have and what you feel like you'll be developing further as a trainee. And again, yeah, so shine as much as you can. It's only you doing that. There's no one else to do it for you. And again, prepare to be interrogated on subjects which might be difficult, because, you know, when you have a scenario, you know you've got to go through all the scenario question, well, the STAR technique. It's quite daunting. So I think in advance, you really want to, maybe after a bit of experience, you might have a better idea about the questions you're being asked. But ideally, you've already prepped some ideas of, you know, examples of where you have had a situation where you've had a task which you've actioned and then you have a result from it. So it is better to, like, basically you should be preparing answers to the questions most commonly asked. That's what I'm trying to say. So I thought, if you think about it like this, the interviewers were once in your position, and, you know, they understand it's quite a nerve-wracking sort of position to be in, and basically they want to employ you if you really want to join the firm, and you've got the skills that they're looking for. So yeah, just concentrate on, you know, showing your enthusiasm and genuineness to the firm, and that you embrace the values that they hold, like their cultural values. The diversity and inclusivity sort of initiatives that they have are very important to confirm as well, because obviously a lot of people want to know that you can be yourself in a firm. So it's very important to kind of know what they're doing about making that happen. Okay, so these were the Q&As, the questions that were asked prior to this today. So I prepared a few answers that I just kind of wrote a few answers to, sorry. So how important is work experience? Is a very general question. And of course, yes, it is essential, but it can be legal or non-legal, just to show that you're entering the working world, you're understanding what working is all about, and your required skills. So when the opportunity arises, obviously, as soon as it does, you should apply for legal work experience. And obviously there's a lot of virtual schemes, workshops and insight days. So in your maybe sometimes in your first year you can do that, but if not, second or third year is fine. And then the question on how can I use my part-time job to help answer questions in my application. So again, it's just using the skills. I mean, it's normally like communication, leadership, management, and just how you're developing these. So it's just showing the progression, really. And you can only work with what you've got and what job you've got. But, you know, anything that you do is going to be, is going to show skills. So do law firms look at A-level grades when assessing applications? Well, it's quite a controversial one. A lot of firms recently, due to all the A-levels, have said some of them, a couple of them aren't going to look at the A-levels, but I don't think they're not looking at them. They're just not going to dismiss people if they've got lower grades. But ideally, most firms should really look at the application as a whole, and not just look at it in isolation. So when you say A-levels, it shouldn't be looked at in isolation. Every firm is completely different though. So there might be some firms which are a lot larger and they have maybe a system where their sort of system might just, if you've got a certain level, you might just get rejected. I think that does happen for some firms. But if you go for more small or medium firms, they will have normally an approach where they look at the application overall, because it's acknowledged that A-levels are not a good example of someone's academic achievements. If, you know, you could do no A-levels, you could do a degree, and a lot of people have proven, you know, how far they can go academically. And I think because it takes so long to do an application, though, if in doubt, even if they say what they look for, it's actually better to approach the graduate recruitment teams to say, do you look at the application as a whole? Because once they confirm that, then, you know, they have to, because, you know, you will spend a long time on your application. You don't want to do that and send it if you don't think that they're going to consider it. Now, one of the more recent, well, it's not that recent, but a lot of the firms have the contextual data system that Rare Recruitment Diversity Initiative came up with some years ago, actually, and that's been rolled out to a lot of firms, not just law firms. And it's really clever because it basically will identify how well you did at school for your A-levels in comparison to everyone else. So say you got 3 C's, say you got 3 B's and the average was, say, 3 C's, you would actually get put forward because it would show that you did really well, even though you went to bad school, compared to the rest of the class. So in that respect, if they have contextual data, you will be processed really fairly. So that's really good for like diversity and social mobility candidates. And if you have lower A-levels than they actually ask for, you know, as time goes by, you're proving your academics as you go along through your studies. So, you know, you can be getting really high 2-1s, 2 firsts. Basically, when you write your application, you can just accentuate the fact and say, I know my A-levels weren't, you know, I wasn't quite ready, or I had a few issues, or basically I just academically wasn't really working very hard, but I am now, because you know, it's difficult when you're younger and you're only 17, 18 and you have to do A-levels. You might not really know what you want to do and you might not concentrate. So, you know, if you can show your academic progress since and going forward, it shouldn't be a barrier, and you can still progress, and people have. So don't let that hold you back. And again, you might have mitigating circumstances. It could be illness, it could be absolutely anything. But if you can write that application, people in the graduate recruitment team will look at that and take that into consideration. So hopefully progress you. Okay, there's another one. What's the other one? So commercial awareness, all people ever talk about is commercial awareness. All it is, it's crucial, of course, because it's about understanding a business. So obviously you work in a law firm, you have to deal with businesses, and you just need to understand how they work. So all it is being aware of how businesses operate in the sector they're in and who their competitors are, and it just means understanding how all the political and economic issues surrounding, you know, society affect that particular industry and the client. So this is something that you will just learn, you know, as a trainee, more so once you're in that role of actually being a trainee and working with businesses and clients. But obviously, other than that, you can only sort of really follow businesses and understand them. And when you do your research for your applications, you'll probably delve more into that as well. So yeah, so just think about really what that means and how you can progress with learning more about businesses in general. There's quite a lot of stuff out there on the internet about what to do and how to find out stuff. So I think that's probably pretty well covered, actually. Okay, so we're on to the last bit. So I basically just set up a consultancy business to offer services if people need help. I do a free consultation just to check, you need my help. A lot of people do. And I don't really charge that much really for cover letters, the amount of hours I spend. So if anyone needs any help, I was prepared to pay a small fee for me helping, please do visit my website. But in addition to that, I've got a lot of careers articles I wrote over the summer, some really good FAQs and diversity resources section. I've tried to keep it sort of short and sweet because there's so much information out there. It drives everyone crazy, I think, trying to find stuff. So I'm hoping that it's quite simply set out and it will really help people. I often refer people to it. So I hope it helped, and thank you for listening. Over to Gemma.
Thank you so much, Claire. Really, really helpful. We've got some questions throughout, but I'm just going to hold off on answering them because I do want to have something for the Q&A to discuss. But it's really interesting that you started talking a bit about the social mobility and how employers, law firms particularly, are pledging to really start including students from disadvantaged backgrounds or more of their if they're from an ethnic minority background, which really goes hand in hand into what Shama really does for the industry. And I think I personally, I don't mind talking about this. This is something that I'm very accustomed to. I always found that when I was in law school, I was doing my LPC, that because I had to work at least 20 hours a week to pay for my travel and to pay for my meals and all of that, I was at a bit of a disadvantage to the students who didn't have to work and who relied on financial support from their parents, which I didn't have. And I felt that that did hinder my grades, and unfortunately I didn't get the grades I was supposed to. And I feel that that sometimes really comes out in a training contract application, and I don't necessarily want to say the reason I didn't get a grade was because of that, because I always feel like, was it me, or was it more like, how do I really approach that in an application? And I think that's something that maybe Claire or Shama can answer.
I can. Well, the applications often have the sections that ask if you had to work when you were a student and how many hours, so it can be calculated quite easily. I mean, I think if people have to work, it is really difficult if it really affects your grades that badly, and that is really awful. But you can put that down as a sort of mitigating towards the fact that you might be not getting your grades as high as you need to. So yeah, there are options for putting that on your application normally.
Can I just add to that, aside from possibly putting it down as a mitigating factor, you can also use it to sell yourself, actually, to say, despite having responsibilities, having to earn money, having to perhaps caring for somebody, and perhaps having a disability or some other personal factors that have created extra challenges for you, you can turn that round as a positive and say, despite that, that's actually made me a more resilient person, it's more positive, more flexible, and has developed my skills, therefore, in such a way that I'll actually be bringing a lot more to my work. So you can actually approach it, sell yourself as well.
Definitely can be brought into the applications. Definitely, I've worked with a lot of people who have worked, or they've done lots of extra things that they've had to kind of combine with their studies, and it always looks and sounds like much more impressive that they've had to juggle so much. So it's definitely actually not a bad thing, unless obviously your grades are suffering that badly, and then you don't feel like it is, because you still need to get a 2-1. It's still important to get that 2-1.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Because obviously at Middlesex, a lot of our students are from a wide range of diversity and culture, and it's something we really, really strive on. So I think one thing that our students really need to take away from this is that just because you didn't go to a Russell Group university, it doesn't mean that there is a blockage and you can't get over it. You really, really can. And I mean, Shama, do you have any insight on what law firms are actively doing at the moment, or the law societies actively doing to ensure that inclusion goes far beyond just hiring students who fit BAME, or students who do have a disability or are part of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I mean, I've put in the chat box a link to the Law Society, and I don't know how many of your students are aware that they can actually join the Law Society as members and have the benefit of the networking opportunity that the Law Society provides through its various events. The events are normally organised around certain interest groups. So I've already mentioned lawyers with disabilities, there's the LGBT community, the BAME community, women lawyers division. So there are lots and lots of interest groups that you can actually join. And you would need to do that by registering with the Law Society. It is fairly straightforward. Once you've joined, you will be contacted by the Law Society whenever they're setting up any events, and a lot of them are free events. So it could be around careers, developing your CV, celebrations of certain cultural events. And so, yeah, there's a lot happening at the Law Society, and I think the best thing for the students to do is to actually register. And you can register for more than one interest, actually. And that way they'll be able to get the full benefit from the Law Society. In terms of specific projects that the Law Society is doing to promote social mobility, for example, I mean, I am a Law Society Social Mobility Ambassador. I'm one of a number of ambassadors, actually. And I was selected to be an ambassador so that I could be a role model to law students who don't come from a traditional background, as it were. So, you know, coming from a working class background, grew up on a council estate, went to a state school. I had other challenges, I suppose, cultural challenges, in that it wasn't really encouraged for females to go on to university. So there was that cultural aspect. So socioeconomic factors. So despite that, I managed to graduate and qualify as a solicitor with a general high street practice in London. But then I managed, I mean, as Claire mentioned, you know, don't be put off by the perceived competition. I was afraid to apply to city firms, but my friend said, no, just try, you know. And yeah, I managed to get into a city firm and work there in their real estate department for nearly 4 years. So that's an initiative taken by the Law Society. And what I do as an ambassador is I do go around local schools and local universities to the careers fairs, and get involved with, well, I go to speaking events such as the panel today. So that's a Law Society initiative, which is working very well. Apart from that, the Law Society has carried out extensive research on lawyers, students and prospective lawyers with disabilities, an area that has been neglected over the years. And the groundbreaking research is going to be launched with a best practice guide for employers. And the idea is to really give employers tips on how they can attract more students with certain disabilities. And I think with COVID, working from home has actually shown a lot of employers that it is possible to work from home if it's difficult for you to actually travel to work, and you can equip yourself to work from home. It's not impossible. So there's progress being made there. I don't know whether that answers your question.
No,
there are
it
other projects.
It does. No, it definitely does.
Gemma,
yeah.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
On the point of diversity, also it should be pointed out that there's some very good initiatives out there. So Aspiring Solicitors is so well taken up by nearly all the firms, and they cover all the diversity, social mobility events that you can imagine. They cover everything. They do pride events. They work with firms where they just do a lot of advertising. They go to non-Russell Group universities. They'll introduce students to firms. They do programs. I mean, they are huge. They are nearly taken up by nearly all the firms out there. So there's a lot of progress. I mean, prior to that, there was Rare Recruitment, and they came up with a contextual system. And also recently, Rare Recruitment, in response to Black Lives Matter, they came up with the Race Fair Commitment, and 26 law firms have signed up to that. And it means that they will data analyze all all the trainees from when they go through to progress to partner, just to see on the data if they're getting the fair chance that they're you know, compared to their peers, because there's been evidence to show that maybe certain diversity ethnic minorities haven't actually progressed as steadily. So obviously the best way of doing that is actually looking at the data. So again, is that only happened in July, and Rare Recruitment basically set this up, which is really amazing. But as I said, there's only there's 26 law firms, includes all the magic law firms, magic circle law firms, and I listed them on my website, so it's quite an easy resource if anyone wants to go on there. And I've also included Strive Consultants, who are a small diversity initiative who I'm an ambassador with. They're quite good. They're a little bit smaller, but they work with people and offer programs. And recently on my radar is Upreach, who are a charity for social mobility. And again, I put their contact details there. But sometimes people don't know about these places and where they can get help from. But the social mobility one's quite interesting because they're quite, I don't know, I hadn't heard of them, but they're just called Upreach, and I put the link on my website. So you basically got Rare Recruitment, aspiring solicitors, and some social mobility charities that are doing a lot of really, really good work, I think.
Yeah, no, I've actually put a link to Claire's website in the chat. So students, if you are interested in any of Claire's articles or her talks, they are all on her website. So please have a look at that. Yeah, no, it is really interesting. I think when I was I graduated my LLB over 5 years ago now. And I think when I was in law school, I think it was called Prime, was what was the initiative at the time. And I personally felt there was, although Prime said one thing on the package, the contents was very, very different to, and I felt that there was something that was really, it needed to like be replaced with. I mean, I obviously, I don't come from an ethnic minority background, but where I was the first generation in my family to attend university, and was through a single parent upbringing and living in council properties, that I wouldn't necessarily say has really hindered me. I am very proud of my background. I'm very proud of how I was brought up. I think it's given me the skills and the drive that I have now. And I just sometimes feel that a lot of students who I'll use the term as mature as me, and they feel like that they do have this huge disadvantage, and it's just kind of to let them know that it's not a disadvantage.
Sometimes it's just perceived because it's a general societal feeling, but it's so wrong, because everyone's an individual. And so many times, like, I'll talk to people and I'll be like, there's nothing that you need to worry about, you know, you've got just as good a chance as anyone. It's mad. I think people just get into sort of all these kind of groups, and they put themselves in a group and they go, oh, I'm in this group, so I'm not going to get anywhere. But you actually really have to have that kind of drive as well. And if you have the drive and the ambition, and you use all the resources out there, you don't have to sort of, you know, not make it if you want to. I mean, non-Russell really is something where firms actually go out of their way to find candidates from, especially through aspiring solicitors, because they want to mix it. They don't want just people from Exeter, Bristol, Gupta and Cambridge. They want a mixture of people. But obviously, you know, in the past, people have only applied from those places because they didn't think they had a chance if they didn't come from there. So it's kind of like changing people's opinions and views on what's accepted as well. Whereas, you know, we used to have applications when I worked at the law firm at Travis Smith for 18 years. We used to have applications very rarely at one point from from different firms. They all tend to be from the same ones. So then when we worked with aspiring solicitors and Rare Recruitment, we used to like get a lot more different universities that we didn't really do much with before, because again, you've only got a finite amount of law firms that you can visit during the sort of law fair season. But aspiring solicitors were basically, like we said, we targeted a load of university students from up north, like quite far up north, where we wouldn't be able to go to all of those sort of places, that he'd get a load of students down to the firm, and then they'd spend a whole day and then they'd apply, and a lot of them would get vacation schemes and training contracts. So it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can attest to that as well. Going to University of Liverpool, it's like out of all the Russell Group unis, it's like the least represented in city law. And all of my friends who I speak to, I'll be like, oh, I'm applying to all these city firms this year. They'll be like, why are you applying there? You'll have no chance. It's just like, it's not.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And like I think most people kind of have that when it's not well represented on LinkedIn, they think
Terrible.
I've got a chance, but
that's awful. That's horrible. That's really awful. Because it's not true.
Yeah.
Spread the word. It really isn't.
Shama, do you have anything to add before we move on to a Q&A?
No, I agree with the other panelists.
Brilliant. Okay, so Claire, do you mind just stop sharing your screen?
Don't be afraid of an apply.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Oh yeah, sorry, it was hidden behind everyone's pictures.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just so we've got a bit of a gallery view now, as for some Q&A. So we've had quite a lot of questions been coming in, and thank you all so much for hanging around and talking. And I just really appreciate that diversity talk that we just had, because me personally, it helps, and I'm sure it's really helped a lot of our students here. So again, thank you so much for that. So we're just going to move on to some questions. Emma has been collating them all. She's been fantastic. So thank you in the background, Emma. So we've got some regarding to Flex. So I'll kind of just start in order. So what about COVID? Is there still face-to-face opportunities, or are they more online at the moment?
Good question. So to explain about COVID in general, we were hit really, really badly by COVID. We lost about half of our paralegals within a few weeks, and we were just hit really badly because they were the first to go. The notice period was quite short, so they're always the first to go, unfortunately. But it's picked up recently, which has been quite good. Pretty much the large majority of all placements are online, remote working. Some students some paralegals work from their own laptops and just like log in via a cloud-based software, or law firms are delivering laptops. And also, like, for example, we've got 10 paralegals going into Freshfields in Manchester tomorrow to pick up laptops, and they'll be taking them home with them. So pretty much everything is online. There are some where you might need to go into the offices, and you always have to be prepared. Potentially they might ask you to come into the offices, but obviously if you're high risk or you can't, then that's perfectly fine.
Brilliant. I think it's very similar to us at the university. We're all working remotely at the moment, so I can attest to how challenging it has been. But it's not something that should put anyone off. Absolutely not. So so someone's asked what the process of getting a training contract is. So briefly, if you're talking about how do you apply, I think Claire kind of covered that, but I'm very unclear on the question. It's very vague. Is anyone
I think it might be because I mentioned that some Flex paralegals have got training contracts with the firms they've been placed with. So Flex doesn't offer training contracts themselves, but we are looking into the SQE of whether, because when you're placed through Flex is your employer. So if you went on about 10 placements through Flex, for the SQE, that might be able to count as one part of the qualifying work experience because it's under one employer. So that's a way you could qualify through us. And then some paralegals, not many, probably only a handful, have gone on to get training contracts through clients they've been placed with. But loads of paralegals have gotten training contracts with other law firms just from their experience.
Well, from next September, when the SQE comes in, they'll be able to do 2 years of qualifying work experience, which can be gained through being paralegal, and they can do up to 4 different firms. So they will be able to do that. They'll be qualified, like qualifying work experience, and then they'll just have to do the SQE course and exams. Yeah.
I think we're still waiting on the. Yes, sorry, Shama.
In relation to the SQE, of course, that's still under, aspects of it are still under consultation because some aspects, for example, reasonable adjustments for students with disabilities are being looked at very carefully. So it's difficult to say what the outcome is going to be and whether it is actually going to be in place as planned. So a little bit of watch space as well.
Yeah, I think I know a lot of students are asking about the SQE. I think we're still waiting an update from the SRA, which I think is due out at the end of October, November. I want to say Louis is more the expert on this. So students, if you are interested in finding out about the SQE, we will be arranging a session when we know more. So probably in the new year about the SQE. So please keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, I know Claire has written an article on it, so have
Very
a look
thorough.
at that. Yeah, it is very, very thorough. I can attest to that. So have a look at that. I have my own personal experience with the SQE as well. So if you do have any generic questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Is working through Zoom harder than an office environment, or is it more same? Or
For me, I was quite lucky. So I worked in the office for about 2 or 3 months before lockdown. So I had the trading in person, which was a lot easier. And we had someone join about a week before lockdown, and I think they kind of struggled with the training because it is very much through osmosis. And I learned just from hearing everyone around me do what they're doing. I could just peek over someone's shoulder, see what they're doing. So it's definitely a bit harder. The communication isn't always there, but we use Slack, so we can just instant message people all the time. So I wouldn't say it's much harder. It's a little bit harder, but it kind of has its benefits as well, being able to work at home.
Yeah, I think also one of the things is I think it's just an adjustable thing. I wouldn't say it's harder, it's just different, and it's quite hard to put into words that, I mean, position I'm in, I started it a week before lockdown happened, so I learned a lot from home, and I think, yeah, the benefit is when you do learn in an office, you can just have a look or turn your chair to talk to the person behind you, whereas at home you're left to your own devices. But I have found that working from home has really shown those who are able to work and are able to be independent and kind of get on with things to those who really need to be pushed the whole way through. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I think some employers have actually gained from their employees working from home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Massive.
So once you apply for Flex, is it only paralegal jobs that are available?
Majority are paralegal jobs. We have lawyers as well, but obviously you have to be a qualified lawyer for that. Paralegal jobs, some just like basic admin jobs and legal secretary jobs, but the large majority are paralegals. And there was another question about the pay. So it's paid hourly, and it's in London, it's between 12 to 14 pounds per hour, but it could be higher depending on the client.
Yeah, and I think the last one, can third years on the LLB apply? I think that was already answered, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Claire, we've got some questions for you now, if that's okay, but if anyone else wants to contribute, it's a panel discussion, just jump in. So do you get paid in the position of a trainee? I assume this means,
yes, of course you do.
Yes, as a trainee solicitor. It's a 2-year
paid very
training
well.
contract. Yeah.
You get paid very well.
Yeah, that answers it. So we've got a question from a student who is a mature student, and what is your advice for people in that situation? So
how mature?
Yeah, I think they've said they bring a bit of live experience and baggage.
Well, obviously firms they're happy to take on second career people who are taking on a second career because they've already had a career and they've already got all the skills of working, and they understand that. So it depends what their reasons are for moving into law, if they've got good reasons for it. But I think as a mature student, you've got an advantage because you've obviously got a lot more to offer, and there's absolutely no reason why law firms wouldn't take on older candidates. I mean, when I was at the firm that I last worked, Travis Smith, they used to take on mature candidates that applied because they had a lot of experience and there was no reason why they wouldn't. The only thing is you just get less applicants who are in that position, so that's why you have less mature less mature people going towards the training contract route. It's sort of in the minority, but I think people shouldn't be held back by that at all, because you can have a change of career if you're prepared to then go back into a position of being a trainee. I think that's the only thing you have to really consider, because obviously you might have had a career where you were a manager, or you're sort of, or whatever manager means, but you had a position that was quite high, and then obviously if you're then as trainee, you're going to have to be told what to do by other people, which could be an issue. So that's just one of the considerations, and obviously it's a big commitment if you've got to do 2 years of a training contract and possibly maybe even an LPC or something prior. So it's a massive big commitment, but for somebody to make that decision is huge, so they would take that to be quite serious, that the reasons that you're doing it are very obvious. So yeah, you should always investigate, definitely, if you want to apply as an older candidate, as long as you're 100% sure about what you need to do to get there. You should never let that hold you back.
Brilliant. And I think there's another one here. I think this was kind of spoken about, but maybe just to clarify it. So a student has asked, if you initially want to get a training contract with a firm and they offer a vacation scheme in which at the end you can get interviewed for a training contract,
Yes.
which would it be better to apply for?
You should always, if possible, do the vacation scheme, because it means that you find out more about the firm and they find out more about you before you then decide, or they decide. So you can also, some people sell themselves better during a longer period of time where they might be able to do some work and show what they can do, especially if you've got maybe lower A levels and they're more particular about that. So you might sort of get the chance to be on a scheme to prove yourself, like through academic work that you're given. So there's different considerations when you think about it, but generally you should always, if possible, do vacation scheme. And obviously this is a lot more workable now because they're only virtual and they're only about 3 days, whereas they used to be 2 weeks and you'd be in the office. So if you can do 3 days, what's 3 days? It means that you find out about the firm, you get to network, they find out about you. It's definitely a more preferred route than just going straight to the training contract.
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, what was your experience on your vacation scheme?
So my vacation scheme was a virtual VAC scheme this year, and Osborne Clark, they do have a direct training contract route, but about 90% of their TCs goes to VAC scheme candidates, and they only have about 25 TCs on offer. And I was a bit apprehensive about being a virtual VAC scheme, but it was actually like the most incredible week. I found out so much about the firm, and in a way it was better because they were able to put a lot on, and there was so much information there, and we could kind of pick and choose at what we wanted to go to. Also, everyone was assessed on the same assessments, so there was no, usually in a VAC scheme in person, you might be in a really busy department and get loads of work given to you, but someone else might not get as much work, and so they don't have much to base them on. But all of us across all the offices did all the same work, so it was quite good to be assessed equally. And it was only a week. It was quite an intense week. It was very full on, but it was so enjoyable, and I got to know so much about the firm. So definitely always VAC scheme over training contract, I say.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a question here, and I think I'm going to aim it at Shama. So how can you talk about a firm's diversity and inclusion culture in your application?
Oh, do you mean ask the firm?
I think the student is asking, how do they show the firm, like what are the kind of buzz phrases they need to be including if they want to show the firm that they are interested in their pledge to diversity and social mobility?
Yeah, I don't think it's enough just to say, to use buzzwords actually. I think you need to show a little bit more than that, some engagement, some activity that you've been involved in, either, at university, there are lots of societies that you can join where you can take on responsibility. Even outside of university, you could get involved with an organisation, nearer to your home, whether it's your local community centre or local schools, voluntary activities, maybe fundraising for a particular cause, a charitable cause. And I'm thinking of, it's not enough to use, but I have come across applications where, where it's emphasised that I want to help promote diversity and inclusion. You've got to show that you've actually been involved in something. You can set up, for example, I've mentioned, disabled lawyers. If you have a disability, you could maybe set up within, if you're at university, a group of disabled lawyers where you just network and meet, even for a coffee and a chat. I think that's the best way to do that, to be honest, rather than just using buzzwords, because everybody knows what it means and it's out there in the media. So yeah.
No, I completely agree with that, and I hope that answers the question. We've got a few more, but before I go on to the next questions, I want to say this to all of our attendees. It will be posted. Your password for today's session, if you are entering the Gradstock competition, is training contracts. I will post that into the chat, but that is your password. So I hope that you are entering our competition and a chance to win. I think it's an Amazon voucher. We've got a few prizes. So that's your password, training contract. Very nice and easy for this session. So I'm going to move on. So I've got a question here from a student who I have actually spoken to, and she kind of wants to know, so she is a US student and she's studying her LLM, and she kind of wants to know, is a vacation scheme helpful for her? She's not interested in a training contract, but do you think that she should be applying for vacation schemes just to get the experience here in the UK and then taking it over back to the States?
If you don't want a training contract, there's no point really doing a vacation scheme, because then you'd have to sort of be basically, when you apply for the vacation scheme, most of the questions related to your application are why do you want to do the scheme, and they're looking for you to then sort of say, because I then want to strengthen my application for a training contract. So it's kind of like a little bit I don't see that would work, to be honest.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I mean, by vacation scheme, I'm assuming you mean a scheme that is intended to lead to possibly a contract. But law firms do take on, for example, graduates for graduate assistants who don't actually know what they want to do, to be honest. Quite often they don't have a law degree, or they're from overseas. And that's perfectly good experience, actually, the skills that they will learn within law firms. So if not a vacation scheme that's aimed at leading to a training contract, maybe some other work experience, whether it's as a graduate or for a shorter period, that would definitely be very, very useful. I've actually supervised non-law graduates who had master's degrees, who weren't quite sure what they wanted to do, and they really took away a lot from the skills that they had to develop within the law firm.
Brilliant. That's really, really helpful, Shama. Students ask, I think this has really been answered by all of our panelists. What can a graduate do to gain experience / stand out? I think Claire definitely said it's where when you talk about yourself, you really need to sell yourself in a very positive light, and you need to not disregard the experience you have or the opportunities that were put in front of you, because you might not think it's relevant, but in that application form it means a huge thing to your employer. Take me as an example. When I was the second year of university, I was captain of the women's rugby team. I was elected to do that, and that's something that I always put in my applications, because not only does it show teamwork, commitment and communication, it also shows I was put into a position of trust by my teammates, and they entrusted me to run the team. And that's something that has no inkling to law, I mean, unless you're going to be a sports lawyer, but it's definitely something that you should always include. So if you want to stand out, think of all those things that you've done, maybe away from university as well, and do you think, did I learn something in that could help me become a solicitor or in any aspect of a job? And I think 9 times out of 10, the answer is always going to be yes.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I onboard so many people who don't necessarily have the legal work experience, but worked in another role and non-legal, but it's got so many transferable skills that they just don't realise. I always say, and this is bad coming from me trying to promote Flex, but don't underestimate your legal work experience. Like Claire mentioned, it's so, on my applications, I think I had a solid why commercial law. And I think as long as you can say why you want to do law, you don't need to bother too much about your legal work experience. If you can convince someone you know why you want to do law, you can use your competency questions and use non-legal work to back those up. Also as well, be confident. Like Claire said, I got rejected from an assessment centre at a city law firm last year because I came across nervous. And I was like, well, obviously I'm going to be nervous if I really want it. But from then on, I was kind of like, I've got to assessment centre, they like me, they see potential in me, I'm just going to be confident. I've got nothing to lose at this point. It's just about being yourself, being honest. And I think that really helped me with OC, because I went into the interview, just kind of said what I wanted to say, and it was what they wanted to hear, which was quite nice. And I'd also say go to firm events. I met OC at a Legal Cheek event, didn't know too much about them. And from then on, I got to network with trainees, grad recruitment, and just was so interested in the firm that I went to another event, met the partner that eventually interviewed me in my vacation scheme interview, and it just helped me so much relaxing and being able to be confident in my interview.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, can I just say very briefly, I agree with everything that's been said, that if you are looking to develop additional skills, then within a law firm, apart from being technically competent as a lawyer, you know, the new skills are, you know, being able to network and bring in new clients, retain clients, social media. If you can show that you have a LinkedIn account and you tweet or you blog, that's something that lawyers are expected to do now. A commercial acumen that has already been mentioned. So I don't know if you've got to buy and sell online, you know, make money through eBay, anything that shows that you've got those extra skills. And again, diversity and inclusion, we've already said using the buzzwords isn't enough. So if you can find an angle that you can get involved with a society or even raise money for a particular charity, whether it's leukemia or some other protected characteristic, then yeah, do that will improve, show you as a different type of person, somebody who stands out from other people.
Brilliant.
Also, just quickly, what Shama just said, all those things that she said are really good to put on your CV, because your CV sometimes is only sent with a cover letter for an application. So if you can show all your work experiences, voluntary work and achievements, and obviously if people come from ethnic minority backgrounds, I've seen loads of CVs where people are really involved in work in the countries that they've come from or they want to support, and that looks brilliant, and obviously it shows a proper commitment to putting something back as well. So a lot of people do have volunteer opportunities or pro bono, all of those, but they can really be captured on a CV, which is great, and then they can be expanded on when you write your applications for your vocational training contract applications, because then you can draw out more examples in detail. So I think sometimes a CV can actually also encapsulate all that kind of information concisely as well.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I think a lot of the questions have been answered. Firstly, I just want to thank all of you for being here and answering all of our questions and giving insights on your own experiences and your own expertise. And I think I personally have gained a lot from this, and I hope all of our other students have as well. I think closing remarks, obviously any students, they all know what my role is in the university. If they do have any questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. And if I personally don't know the answer, I will reach out to those who do and find you the appropriate answer. I mean, I know Claire I reached out to Claire on LinkedIn for this, as she is so happy to connect with you and to have a little chat with you about anything of that sense, again, myself included. So great what Shama said about LinkedIn. So please attend our LinkedIn session tomorrow. We are hosting on actually how using LinkedIn and navigating it. It's so important right now, and such a great way for us to all stay connected. Jamie has also put his LinkedIn in the chat there, so thank you so much for that, Jamie. I popped all of yours in, and Shama, you are on LinkedIn as well, aren't you? Yeah. So before we go, should we go around and see who's got a couple of closing remarks, a bit of advice for all of our students? So I'll start with Shama.
Yeah, sure. Just to say that you know, I've been qualified over 30 years now, and I've had lots of different roles, from being a solicitor to a lecturer to a support lawyer to an social military ambassador. And there have been times when it's been challenging, because the profession can be, and there have been times when it's taken toll on my mental health. So the message really is, you know, that's life. It can be hard, but be kind to yourself. Look after yourself. Understand, you know, when you are feeling stressed, when you need to turn to whatever service the university provides, or your friends or families provide. So, you know, mental well-being is really important. So that's my message.
Thank you, Shama. Jamie, we'll come to you next.
I just always have 3 tips, and I've kind of already mentioned them, but go to law firm events. There's so many being hosted virtually this year. The Legal Cheek events, they're really good. Just sign up to as many as you can, and just get an insight into these firms. Don't neglect your non-legal work experience and your extracurriculars. There's so many transferable skills from from those that you can use to back up your applications, and be confident. Just, you've got nothing to lose, really. Be confident in yourself and your ability, and you'll go far. And yeah, I put my LinkedIn in the chat. If you guys have any questions at all, or just want to connect, feel free.
Thank you, Jamie. And last but not least, Claire.
I would say, if you're determined and ambitious and you want to get somewhere and do something, you can. Don't let some thoughts about wrong uni or slightly lower grades get to you, because it's not a true reflection of your academic abilities if you know that you're definitely determined to get there. And yeah, don't be influenced by other people. Try and make your own path and do your own research and make your own decisions, because sometimes people say things that it's just like Chinese whispers. So yeah, just ask the experts if you need to like clarify anything, and just use all the resources that are out there to get you on the road to making your applications and being successful.
Brilliant, thank you. So once again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for joining us for Gradstock 2020, our first virtual employability fair of the year. I'm going to stop the recording now.